You have to choose if you want the second rifle license or the third rifle license. You don't get to hunt both.
If you want to get away from that and you're not as concerned with harvesting a branch antler bull.
If I don't want to see a lot of people comparing an archery mid-September hunt versus a second or third rifle hunt.
Welcome to the Built to Hunt podcast, brought to you by the team of hunt advisors at the Huntin magazine, where we are dedicated to helping our members go on more hunts with better information. Join Huntin today at huntinfool.com.
I'm personally excited about tonight because I'm going to learn a ton myself, and being I did not draw a couple tags I was hoping to, I'm personally looking to pick up some information and maybe get an extra tag here for the upcoming fall. But to you guys, and let you guys introduce yourselves and kind of kick this thing off.
So I'm Garth Jensen. Obviously I work with Huntin Fool. I don't know how much you want to know about me and my personal life, but all of it. I've been with Huntin Fool for about 9 years now. Love it. It's amazing to be able to research and find all these opportunities out and be able to say that I get paid to do it. So I look forward to helping anyone out there that has maybe the luck of Dylan and doesn't draw any tags. Kind of fill them in and share with them what I've learned and how I could pick up some awesome tags and shoot. You to go out and take a trophy spike like that one I'm showing right there.
There you go. I'm Austin Atkinson here. Been on a few of these webinars before, but always looking forward to sharing more information and hopefully bring to light an opportunity you may have missed. I live here in Cedar City, Utah. I've worked here at the Huntin Fool for about 8 years, and I love adventure hunts. I spend a lot of time guiding as my part-time gig up in Alaska, Arizona, and New Mexico. I just like taking other people hunting. My kids aren't quite old enough to go on too many hunts, but as soon as they are, I'm going to be taking them out just like Garth takes his daughter out. So a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Dylan, you want to talk about yourself a little more?
Yeah, I'm definitely not as important as you two gentlemen as far as the information goes, but yeah. So I've been with onX for coming up on 8 years now. That deer in the photo is not a leftover tag opportunity hunt. That would be cool if it was, but could get lucky and find one like that. But yeah, I've been here almost 8 years. Grew up hunting, and pretty blessed and fortunate to have landed myself in a career to work with the folks at Huntin Fool and just get to go hunting every once in a while and do some cool stuff. So yeah.
So we titled this webinar Leftover Tags, and a lot of us, when we think of the word leftover, well, I always think of a Tupperware in the fridge, right? It's not something that great. I'm going to make up an excuse. It literally is what you didn't like or didn't finish the night before, and that's kind of a bad connotation, but we use that word leftover quite a bit, and it doesn't always mean that it's what someone didn't want. It may be something that when undersubscribed for one reason or another, it might not be something bad. So don't think these are the bottom of the barrel type opportunities we're going to talk about. More than anything, we're talking about maybe a lack of early planning, or your schedule changed. You didn't draw the tag maybe you thought you would, and now I'm looking for a short-term opportunity. What can I do in these holes that I have in my schedule? So we're going to kind of go state by state and hopefully expose you to some opportunities that still exist for 2023 and help you plan early on some things you need to do this fall to get ready for 2024.
I will say this, most leftover tags, they're not the cream of the crop.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I will, because of the amount of people that are now participating in the draw, they're definitely sought after. Yeah. So leftover, yes, it doesn't mean exactly what it used to mean.
That's right. So one thing we wanted to highlight, we have done a few of these master classes this year, very specific ones, and you can jump on the onX Hunt YouTube and definitely check all those out. So if you are looking for our suggestions on which states give you the best bang for your buck or best value for your money, jump back on that January masterclass and watch that. You can see all of it in its entirety on that YouTube film, and I would definitely recommend that. So we've tried to make these masterclasses specific to help you out, but hopefully it sparks interest in other topics that you can go back and research a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Tons of really, really good information in there. Definitely go back through YouTube, search for those. And even if you're planning on next year, like, you know, obviously there's a lot of cool opportunities for this year still. That's what we're about to jump into. But even for knowledge and just understanding for next year, there will be some changes. But if you're bored and want to check out some new content, definitely give those a watch. One other thing I do want to mention, a lot of folks are utilizing it, hopefully everyone on this call, but if you are an elite member for onX, you do get a free digital membership through Huntin Fool. Tons of really good information in there. I'm in there constantly. When I first started out applying for new states, it was pretty seasonal for me, but now I'm coming to realize it's a whole year thing, just like hunting is. So what am I doing next year? What am I doing in 2026, 27, and so on and so forth? So constantly planning. And there's, you know, I'm not saying this because I'm on the call with these gentlemen here, but there's no better tool than Huntin Fool for that. So utilize that. And then they have some cool opportunities for some upper tier stuff that they provide that we'll talk about at the end.
I didn't draw. Now what do I do? Some of these terms are not the same depending on which state you're looking at. So I'm going to consider an over-the-counter tag or license, meaning there is no draw. I don't have to apply by a deadline, even though some of the units or hunts may have a quota. Maybe it's a non-resident quota, maybe it's a unit quota, and some may be unlimited. It could still be considered an over-the-counter. You purchase it either online or at a vendor. They hand you the permit as you paid for it, and you go on the hunt. That's what we consider to be over the counter. Now, some states have messed that up a little bit and giving some extra hoops to jump through, but it's still an over the counter tag. Whereas a leftover tag, it's that Tupperware in the fridge. It's something that was unclaimed, meaning in some states like Idaho, if someone drew a good permit, but they chose not to purchase it and put it in their name or claim it, it will roll back to a second draw. So it might not be a poor hunt. They just didn't follow the proper steps or their schedule changed, and that could be an unclaimed tag.
And that one, you could see some of them cream of the crop tags come out.
For sure.
Granted, it's going to be incredibly tough to draw, but I've seen some very good trophy quality hunts come up for that second draw.
That's right. A return tag, some of these states do allow you to return them. Just straight up surrender the permit back, and you could do that for a refund or for point reinstatement if you burn points on it. Just depends on the state. They're all a little different. Kind of the same thing with reissued. Each state has a process of how they're going to reallocate those tags. If some states, if it's too close to the season opening and they can't call the next draw list winner who would have drawn, then they'll put it up on a reissue list, and we'll show you that. And then in the fall, well, summer to fall, we also run into our points only periods, which are when you can just purchase a point if you missed the draw this year, didn't participate, and that helps you out next year.
I will say this, as far as these processes and these tags, it's evolving. I mean, we are seeing changes to these things on a yearly basis. Not every state goes through the process of changing on a yearly basis, but we see updates made, and we'll go through some of those updates and changes from year to year on this throughout some of these states. But just understand that this is not a hard and fast rule. When they come about, they're ever evolving.
That's right. So the first state we wanted to talk about may be surprising that we're leading with this one, but we don't want you listeners to forget that Alaska is essentially an over-the-counter state for a lot of species. Now, it's going to be more difficult if you're, say, I want to plan a hunt for this fall, meaning fall 2023, just because there's more logistics and bookings involved to go to Alaska, but you do not have to hire a guide to go on a lot of these species hunts. Mainly here, we've highlighted moose, caribou, black bear, and Sitka black-tailed deer. In most of these instances, we're going to recommend that you book some sort of transporter or drop-off service, but you can do that, and you don't have to fork out a giant chunk of change to hire an outfitter. It is Alaska, so you've got flights. It's going to be more expensive than a hunt in the lower 48, but it is a over-the-counter harvest ticket, meaning I can show up in the state of Alaska the day before the hunt and purchase all necessary paperwork and tags to go on the hunt.
Yeah, they're going to have Austin's picture plastered in the Anchorage airport for all the residents to see now because he let off with this. They're just going to be like, this is the reason there's hunters here.
You're the problem.
But it is true, because Alaska for a long time kind of flew under the radar a little bit as far as the opportunity that they had, because logistically speaking, there's a lot more that goes into planning a hunt there. You know, you have to figure out your flights, you have to figure out your transport, you have to figure out how to get your trophy back, you have to figure out how to get your meat back. Like, there's a lot of things that go into doing that. But as time has moved on, and, you know, it's at least the information on how to go through those logistics and how to plan for it, it's become a lot easier, or somewhat easier, to be able to figure that out. And there's not as big of a hurdle to jump over in order to dip your toe in the water. Like honestly, a lot of these, like the black bear and Sitka black-tailed deer, I mean, there's still opportunities this year to do that.
For sure.
You know, you can do some research, get on the line, and you can go on those hunts. And I will tell you this, I've been on every one of these hunts. Every one of them is a fun hunt. Like, I wouldn't rank any of them above another. So just because, say, moose or caribou was booked this year, I would have the time of my life going on a black bear hunt or a black-tailed deer hunt. You know, just as much of an adventure. So that's what I love about Alaska.
And if you're driven
Yeah,
by,
I was just gonna chime in here real quick. So we did a Sitka blacktail hunt two seasons ago, I believe. And it was not quite as daunting as what I expected it to be. It was my first time in Alaska. It's like, logistically, it just seemed like it was going to be a nightmare. Like, how do we get stuff home? As you said, how do we make sure it stays frozen? How do we do this and that? Having done it, it's not as logistically like demanding as it might seem initially. And to Austin's point there, we flew in and we drove to a location and bought our tags right there on the spot right before we flew out for the hunt. So it's one of those things you can bank on, and it's nice having those hunts. For me anyways, it's really nice having those hunts where it's like, whether it be next year or whatever year you plan on doing it, it's like that hunt is going to happen. You don't have to completely rely on the draw. And who knows, you know, we were talking prior with point creep and stuff, some of those units might jump up 2-3 points in a year, and now your guarantee hunt for that next season isn't happening. So it is really nice to do that, and logistically wasn't quite the hurdle I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
and I personally love Alaska. I like hunting up there, but I will plug the urgency a little bit here, that we've lost some caribou opportunities the last few years. Sitka black-tailed deer, we've lost some opportunities. For example, this year on Kodiak Island, they've cut the bag limit down to 1 buck.
Wow.
And whereas in past years it was up to 3 deer you could take as a non-resident, so that's down to 1. And as we've seen in other states, it's really hard to get those opportunities back. Once the residents or the Game and Fish whittles them away from us, they may just go away. So if you are sitting on your hands saying, I'll go to Alaska one of these years, I would just say, have some urgency, put it on the schedule. Let's start planning it now, even if it's an over-the-counter hunt. Let's get things scheduled, because it will not last forever.
And you think guided hunts are expensive now in Alaska? Just wait until maybe one of these species, or if another species goes to 100% guided, no DIY allowed, then they have complete control. So yeah, if money's any type of a barrier there, yeah, do it sooner rather than later.
Yep. Next state, Arizona.
Oh man, my favorite. Now, Arizona is one that, in my opinion, it was one of the most underrated over-the-counter opportunities that were out there. I say were. It still is over-the-counter, but this is another state that we've seen where they put an extra layer of protection because in essence, the residents felt like it was too crowded. There was too many non-resident hunters. They'd kind of they'd hit their threshold, so to speak, as far as the amount of hunters they wanted in the field. They also felt like they were hitting their threshold as far as the amount. I mean, with weapon and technology, they felt like they were harvesting too many deer for what they wanted this hunt to be.
Yeah.
Now, when I say this hunt, this is basically everything south of the Colorado, or a lot of things south of the Colorado, minus a unit or two. You could take and buy a tag over the counter, a non-permit tag, and hunt deer. It was in either species. You could hunt mule deer or coos deer. At last year or 2 years ago, I guess it's hard to say because this is the first year they've had to where they actually have a limit on the number of deer that can be harvested per unit, a quota. So you're limited by that, and that can be closed down at any time. And there was some of those mule deer hunts that got closed down within the first week they opened. That's how fast that quota went. So there's a lot of coos deer tags that stayed open and never filled the quota.
Mm-hmm.
So there is still opportunity to go, but now you have to be more flexible. So they have the quota per unit, for coos deer and mule deer. They also have a quota for the amount of non-residents who buy the tag. Now, last year they went on sale on December 1st at midnight. We're assuming they're going to do the same thing this year. There's a certain amount of tags that are going to be able to be bought. Last year it was 4 days. I expect that to get that gap to close a little bit. It's going to be less. So the tricky part is Arizona went in there and they made it a little complicated. So if you bought a tag for this year that went on sale December 1, you could hunt the January season and then turn around and hunt the August, September season, and then the December season. But you can't hunt next year's January season. You would have to buy that January license, or you'd have to buy the 2024 January to hunt January season in December of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little confusing. And oh, by the way, the quotas don't reset after December. The quotas for those unit quotas, so the mule deer and coos deer quotas that are being able to take off that unit, they go from August, September, December, and then January. So they made it a little complicated, but it's still a great tag if you can get it bought and put it in your pocket. I still think it's a underrated tag, even though there's a lot of people who know about it now.
Sure, it's a $300 tag, and you can only kill one deer in Arizona per calendar year.
Yep.
So you can still apply in the draw, but you can only kill one deer.
Yeah. And a lot of that rut takes place. What makes it confusing, a lot of that rut down there takes place both for mule deer and coos deer in January.
Mm-hmm.
There's some that kind of kicks off in December. So a lot of guys, they'll buy that tag in anticipating of hunting January. If they don't fill that tag, they can still come back and hunt during the August, September. And then if they don't fill it, then they can hunt in December again. So it really is flexible that way, which is another great thing about that. But
the basic takeaways, if you're sitting on a 2023 over-the-counter deer tag in Arizona, meaning you bought it last December, you can go. All the quotas will reset August opener this year. It'll roll into December as long as the harvest quota is not met, and you can hunt it again. If you are not sitting on a 2023 deer tag and you think you may want to do this in 2024, December 1st, put it in your calendar. That's when they're going to go on sale. They go online. Once the non-resident quota is met, it shuts down. It's unlimited still for residents as far as how many tags can be sold. But just because you bought the tag out of the non-resident quota, realize, like Garth was saying, the unit may still close and you'd have to go to another unit. It's kind of like a mountain lion harvest quota. Yeah. Once it's met, it closes the following Wednesday. So a little complicated, but that's how Arizona's working on pretty much their last over-the-counter opportunity that's worth anything.
And cross your fingers, hopefully it sticks around.
Yeah.
I mean, this could very easily turn to a draw if they decide that this system isn't working. Who knows? But for right now, it's a good opportunity.
Still good. Next state is the far western state of California. Yes. It's an expensive state, but when you compare it to some other opportunities, it may fit into your budget. So what they have is mainly the deer and the bear opportunities. So everything Black bear wise is a fall only season, and that's just an over the counter tag you can purchase. For deer, you can pick the zone you want, and that's going to be either archery or rifle when you select that. So all these zones and units have a quota set. The draw's already happened, but a lot of these general tags will not reach their quota for a couple more weeks. Some of them have already sold out, but a lot of them, like a B zone tag, which is Northern California, it's going to be primarily blacktail deer. It's a good hunt if you want to shoot a Columbia blacktail or some sort of hybrid blacktail mule deer. It's a good one you can fill in. You buy the license at the vendor or online, and you can go.
Yeah, it's a tough hunt though. That's the first thing you got to realize. It's going to be a tougher hunt finding deer. You're going to go maybe a day or two without deer if you're hunting public land, because that public land gets hit pretty hard. Because those black bear tags coincide largely with the deer seasons and they overlap. If you like, you're going to probably see more bears than you are deer, realistically, to your hunt. I mean, depending on where you're at, but you know, I've heard that so many times that, yeah, I saw 5-6 bears and I saw a couple deer. So it's a good opportunity, gorgeous country. But if you've been watching some of them fat rendering videos over on YouTube and you're like, man, I want to kill a bear and render that fat and, you know, just eat the hell out of that thing, it is a good tag to put in your pocket. And I would put it in your pocket because those fall bears are going to be big, fat, and sassy.
Yeah. A couple things to remember in California: you do have to buy the non-refundable hunt license and the deer tag. You can actually buy 2 deer tags for the same hunt, same area, if you have the budget for it. And you do have to use copper only bullets.
Oh, that's right.
That catches some guys.
That's right.
You can't just show up there with your precision hunter. You got to have copper only, but that's just because California loves the condors that are left.
Yes. And that's going to bring them back. Just remember that.
Next up, Colorado. Ooh, the big one for over the counter, right?
Well, not the last, but it's going to be one of the last. I mean, Colorado, the thing that's awesome about Colorado right now, it's unlimited, you know, for their archery or their rifle. If it's an over-the-counter tag, they don't put a quota on how many elk can be taken out of that zone. They don't put a quota on how many non-residents can buy a tag. And I'll be honest with you, after looking at some of the numbers, it is kind of shocking, you know, because you hear it all the time. You say, non-residents, there's more non-residents in this unit than there is residents. And most of the time I'm like, yeah, BS.
Yeah.
Well, I've looked at some stats, and there are some units over there where there is more non-residents hunting than residents.
Yeah.
But it's unlimited. There's still a ton of elk over there. But the one thing that people have to understand with this opportunity, there is going to be some hunting pressure. I don't even care if you are 5-6 miles back in the brush. Yeah. You're going to see people. But there is legitimate elk populations in there. And I've went on these over-the-counter hunts a number of times. I don't think I've ever went and not seen an elk. In fact, it's always astonished me how big that elk population is and how many elk you see. Now, it's not like you're always going to see a shooter bull, but that being said, I don't know very many other states that you can go to, buy an over-the-counter tag, and legitimately see elk every single day or every other day.
Big season if you want to go on archery hunt.
Yeah, it's the month of September.
It's as good as it gets.
Yeah, you're hunting. You can pick. I mean, the only thing you throw in there and say, okay, they got an overlapping muzzleloader hunt that sometimes can be problematic, that puts, you know, archery hunters and muzzleloader hunters in the field at the same time. But you can avoid that if you're worried about it.
If I don't want to see a lot of people comparing an archery mid-September hunt versus a second or third rifle hunt.
Oh, third rifle all the way. I mean, the weather's colder, it's tougher, there's more snow. A lot of the residents they've gone out and hunted. They've hunted the second season. It's a lot more sought after because you get first crack at them. The weather's a little bit more doable. Just statistically speaking, and even from what I've seen, because sometimes I don't trust the numbers that the Game and Fish puts out, but just from what I've seen, I would say not quite half, but there is considerably less hunters during that third rifle season if you can tough through the snow and the cold.
You know,
Because a lot of times those elk are still going to be high. Like they're not running to the bottoms of the valleys like the deer.
I know a lot of people get asked the question, if I do an archery over the counter hunt, do I have to pick a unit or can I rotate units? It is valid statewide on all units that are open.
Yeah.
And same goes for the rifle hunt. However, you have to choose if you want the second rifle license or the third rifle license. You don't get to hunt both. You can't switch back and forth, but you can jump unit to unit.
You can. And the one thing to be careful about, because of the increase in demand for these archery hunts and some of this, not all over the counter, or not all units that are enrolled in over the counter rifle are enrolled in over the counter archery. Yeah. They'll have some that are draw archery and over the counter second and third. So you got to be a little bit careful and just pay attention to that. So if you're targeting a certain area, make sure that it has an open season for the hunt that you're going to do.
Just to be clear, this is over the counter only in Colorado. A lot of you have seen questions about second draw and leftovers. We're going to get to that. These are strictly over the counter hunts we're talking at this moment.
I will say this though, if I was looking for a branch antlered bull and I wanted to do an over the counter hunt, I didn't draw anything else. This is my last resort. This is an awesome last resort. Like I would go on these hunts in a second and do. So I absolutely love these hunts, and I don't like to hear when, there's too many hunters. It's just not a good opportunity. It's a phenomenal opportunity.
When we analyze harvest statistics, right, and take them with a grain of salt, but there's some units in Colorado where harvest is surprisingly high. And you compare it to other Western states that have general seasons, that you have sub 5% type harvest. A lot of Colorado hunts are decent harvest.
Oh, you see some in the 20 to 25% harvest for over the counter. That's pretty incredible. And considering that it's not any bull.
That's right.
Most of these areas are like, they're managed. You can't harvest anything unless it's 4-point or better. So basically a 2-year-old bull. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So put Colorado on the list. It's a great last resort, if you will. I always have a plan or unit I've researched, mapped it out on onX in my back pocket. If something else doesn't work out, I know I can drive to Colorado, buy a license and go.
100%.
Let's talk about Oregon.
Yes, Oregon. State. That's Dylan's favorite state. Oregon. Basically, what I'll say is, over on the West Coast, there is good opportunity for over the counter. Roosevelt, Blacktail, both of those have over the counter hunts, both for rifle and for archery. It's a good opportunity to get out there and have a fun hunt. It's different hunting.
Sure.
They're not as congested with animals. I mean, Blacktail, I would say, is probably going to be a little bit better in most cases as far as the amount of animals you're going to see, unless you get on some of that private timber company land, which there is. And they do have setups to where you can contact these timber company lands and sometimes purchase trespass fees. Sometimes they just have a free registration for trespass fees, depending on the timber company. But there's certain restrictions and things you have to adhere to in doing that. But I will say the timber company land does have more animals. There is decent hunting in some of the public land as well, but it's a lot more difficult. It's less managed. It's a lot denser old growth forest. So it is difficult. Now, there are still a few Rocky Mountain elk permits over on the eastern or central eastern portion that are still over the counter. Most of those units are largely small populations, and I'm talking like that's why they left them at that, because they don't have real dense populations in there. So you're talking about a very small densities of elk in those areas. It's an opportunity, but that's a buyer beware. Like if you have knowledge of the area, someone that has knowledge of that area, it might be a good hunt for you. But for someone just picking up a tag and wanting to go hunt elk over the counter, 99% of the time, I would say there's better options for you in other states if you're just looking to do an over-the-counter archery elk hunt, unless you have some pretty good solid intel.
That's right. And as the dates roll with the Oregon calendar, the way they set up their hunts, on like the Roosevelt elk, for example, the archery season is going to go this year till October 1st. So you should capture some pretty good rut activity if you can see them in the thick timber, but it should be about as good as it gets. If you've had that on your list for a while, I would start putting together an Oregon hunt sooner than later.
I'll interject real quick on Oregon. So I think a lot of these things too, for me, for example, this year, I was planning on getting an Oregon tag. It didn't work out. So I'm already invested for that $172. So Oregon hasn't necessarily been on my list for an over-the-counter Roosevelt hunt or anything of that nature, but I'm already a couple $100 invested into it. So now I'm considering picking up that general tag. So I think for me anyways, a lot of it has to do with like, okay, where did I apply this year? What am I already invested into? I didn't get what I was planning on getting. Is there any opportunities in that state? Instead of going out and spending that extra $200 or some cases more, like what can I do for over-the-counter stuff, as a backup there?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, if you're already invested in that state, I mean, that's going to be the cheapest elk tag you can pick up if you can deduct that $172 hunt license.
That's very true. Let's talk about our home state of Utah. We've broken this one into two different sections. First one is mainly archery, and then we'll talk about rifle or firearm. So Utah still going strong. We have an over-the-counter, truly unlimited quota archery general elk license, we'll call it. So you say, wait, I thought Utah only had big bulls. Well, we do have big bulls. And on those units, we have an archery general season where you can only shoot a spike or a cow. So you see, like in this picture here, that is a legal spike because it has basically 3 points on one side, but just one spike on the other above the ear. So that's legal. As long as it's got 1 point on one side, you can take it. And so our hunt license price is going up July 1st. That'll be $120 for a non-refundable hunt license. And then you can buy this general elk archery permit at any time, the day before your hunt, the morning of, whatever it may be. You don't have to jump on it and buy it. You can do it when you arrive. But what you can do with that archery permit is you can essentially hunt statewide, just about every unit. But depending on which unit you're in, if you're in, we'll call it a big bull unit or a trophy unit, you can only hunt cows or spikes, and you have a little bit shorter archery season. It'll start in August and September 8th. If you are in outside of the trophy units, we call them any bull units, and meaning they have either more private land or they're not managed for high elk numbers, maybe more wilderness, tougher access. Those are just our general any bull units, and you can hunt that from August until September 20th. So you will capture some of the rut, and you don't have to select a unit. You can jump back and forth. You can go to an any bull unit, get frustrated, there's not many elk, and jump back over to a spike unit where those are trophy units. There's elk everywhere, but you got to weed through them to find a spike or a cow that you can shoot.
Yeah, I mean, I tell guys this all the time, but realistically, like the amount of hunting pressure I talked about in Colorado, if you want to get away from that and you're not as concerned with harvesting a branch antler bull, seriously, these limited entry zones in Utah, they're managed for good populations, lots of public land. You can pretty much traipse around wherever in most of these limited entry units, with the exception of only a couple. Mm-hmm. But if you're just after meat, and love elk meat and want some good opportunities to get on elk day after day, like you'll have stalking opportunities. As long as you're not picking, you're going after trophy spikes like Jared, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to go on, stalks for cows, spikes, sure. You name it.
I know, Garth, we always use this hunt as like a kickoff to the year, even in late August. Like, hey, I'm going to go get the kinks worked out on my gear. I've got my bow sighted in well. I'm going to try a couple new cow elk calls that I have. I want to see elk, make sure I like my new boots, whatever it may be. It's fun to actually be on a hunt, not just on a hike, right? Yeah. In August, as you're getting ready for your busy season. And you can look at some of the great public land that Utah has to offer and see some big elk if you go to a spike unit.
Hey, I don't know how many days it is till we're launching that, but we should have a video coming out shortly.
That's right.
Of a spike hunt that I went on last year in Utah. So if you guys are curious about what it is and what it's about, we documented it last year and we're going to have it on YouTube.
Some people say, how can you shoot a spike? Well, it's some of the best eaten meat ever. And like we said, who doesn't want to hunt elk every year over the counter or as often as you can? It's a great opportunity.
And management practices understand that these units that they're having these spike hunts on, like they are issuing very, very, very few mature bull tags on this. So if we don't, like if Utah didn't have this spike hunt, they would have to have a ton more tags in the general or in the limited entry bull hunt. And then those people that have those tags are going to complain because it's too crowded and there's not big enough bulls and things like that. So this is a way to control the bull population so it doesn't get too many bulls per cows in those areas without like hindering that trophy opportunity for those guys that draw that big bull tag.
That's right. The other option, if you don't want to go archery and you're like, I'm not an archery hunter, this doesn't interest me, you can go on a rifle or muzzleloader hunt as well. And same unit rules apply. If it's a spike unit, it's always going to be a spike unit. If it's any bull, it's any bull. When you roll over to a rifle or muzzleloader, you do have to select that season when you buy your tag, and it's not going to be valid for a cow anymore. So it's going to be spike only on the spike units or any bull on the any bull units. And Utah's messed that up a little bit this year by putting in some more hunts. Basically, your any bull units are going to have 2 hunts, one in October starting on the 7th, and the one also in October starting on the 14th. The second hunt starting on the 14th will not have a quota, but the first hunt will have a quota of 15,000 permits. Those will go online for sale in July, on July 13th, and they will sell out most likely that day.
Right.
So that is an over-the-counter, but there's a quota, they're going to sell out quickly.
And again, you do have to select, once you get to a rifle or muzzleloader, you do have to select a spike tag, or if you're going to hunt spike or any bull units. You can't go back and forth like you could with the archery. It's more selected there. So just understand that. And you know, the muzz hunt, I'll tell you what, if you have a muzzleloader scope on it, at this point, if you're looking for fewer hunters in the field, the muzzleloader hunt's definitely the one to go.
Because it's not till November.
It's cold, the elk are still up high, but honestly, like there is a fraction of the hunters during that hunt. So if you're concerned about some of the hunting pressure, look at the muzzleloader.
These are great filler hunts, right? If you're looking for a hole in your schedule and you want to fill it with coming to Utah on a hunt, or if you have any youth hunters, it's a great opportunity to get them out in the field. What they do for the youth hunters, meaning under age 18, is they can hunt all these seasons we just talked about. They can jump back and forth from spike units to any bull units, from the archery season, rifle or muzzleloader. They can utilize all seasons that were shown on the last 2 slides. So from August through the November muzzleloader season, and they can hopefully find an elk to shoot.
And that's a new change for this year that I'm glad they made. I mean, they just kind of simplified that process because they used to have it for one, not the other.
Mhm.
They just simplified it, merged and said, hey, let's give these kids every opportunity they can to be successful. Here you go.
And there's no quota on the youth general permits. So bring your youth to Utah and try it out. Even if you don't have a permit and you just want to experiment, a youth hunter would be a great opportunity for sure.
I think real quick too with Utah, new hunters, especially archery hunters. Like I was just at an elk shape camp event, and one of the big things that I took away from that is new hunters, like the opportunities to call an elk and just be comfortable around elk is invaluable. Like thinking back how many times of like, I wish I would have done this or that. Having those experiences on something like this with a spike hunt, or you know, even just having some cows up close and personal, it's really good opportunities. So for new hunters too, I think that these are definitely underutilized opportunities.
That's a good point.
For sure. So we get to hunt a lot. We're lucky that way. And all of us here in the office have taken some really nice bulls over the years in different states with tags we've drawn. But we don't miss this hunt because it is so much fun. And it's just a low pressure, high energy archery hunt or even on the rifle hunt, yeah, there's a lot of hunters, a lot of pressure, but it's a chance to get out and experience public land, big wide open spaces. And yeah, I'm a little partial to it, I guess.
The cool thing is if you blow up a stock or you blow up a call sequence, big deal, brush it off, go to the next canyon, do it all over again. It's not the end of the world if the cow runs off or if the spike goes into another area.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it's a bull of a lifetime. So it's fun that way.
That's right. Continuing on over the counter, we're about to our last state here. So Washington, far northwest corner, they still have opportunities. The best ones we'll highlight here are going to be Roosevelt elk, or what I'll call a Cascade Roosevelt elk, meaning west of that Cascade mountain range divide. Pretty liberal seasons there. You have to choose if you want the archery, the rifle, or the muzzleloader permit. You can't jump back and forth. But if you choose the archery season, you get an early archery in September and one in November. Obviously, most hunters go on the rifle or the muzzleloader. But same thing as Oregon, you're hunting very, very thick timber company land or thick jungle type forest. Not going to be very glassable or open terrain like we're used to in some other Western states. But if you're looking for Roosevelt elk, it still is one of the cheaper elk licenses at under $500 for a non-resident. It's a lot of cash, but it's cheaper in the game of things we're playing now. And you can also put a deer license in your pocket at the same time if you're on that western half and chase blacktail deer. So in the jungle, overlapping season dates, for most of them, you can chase blacktail. What's that?
Sorry, go ahead. I'll ask my question after you're done with that, Austin.
I'm just saying that if you're going archery, a lot of those season dates will overlap and it could be a good hunt. But if you're looking at, whitetail or mule deer, there are quite a few opportunities. The deer tag is statewide, but you still have to choose your weapon that you want to hunt. And there's quite a bit of public land you can hunt for mule deer or whitetail on the eastern half of the state. Just realize there will be thousands of hunters there. Most of the units are a 3-point minimum, like on a mule deer hunt. I don't kill a ton of large bucks, but it is a chance to go. If you have a youth hunter, it's very, very cheap, under $50 for an elk and deer license together, and good excuse to see Washington if that's on your list.
I will say this, if there's any reason at all that you have planned this in advance of the draw and you're planning on buying that elk license or deer license anyways, go ahead and apply in the draw. I mean, we don't ever recommend guys really apply for that for non-residents because it's too expensive, because basically you have to buy that license in order to enter into the draw.
Right.
But if you do have any forethought on that and say, okay, well, I know I'm going to buy an elk license in Washington this year anyways, go ahead and apply in the draw, because then it's fairly cheap to do.
That's right. All right, let's jump over to leftovers. So we just left over the counter, buy the license and go, buy the tag and show up. Now we're going to talk about leftovers and what these states do on that process.
And the first line out of the gate is a question we take very often. The secondary draw. Youth get full preference on that. Now, some of the guys that were playing this, they didn't call it the secondary draw. I think they called it the leftover draw back in the day. You had to sign up for it, and when you applied in the draw, they emailed you a list of units or hunts that were still available for that. That's the only way you could apply.
Sure.
Now it's come one, come all. They changed a few things in there. So now you're seeing tags in there. You're like, hey, I applied for this tag and I didn't get it with 5 points or 6 points. Like, how is this even on the list? Well, understand that there is a period right after following the primary draw that you can surrender your tag back to the Game and Fish, basically reversing those charges, getting your points back too. All of those tags that meet the point requirements, but I think it's like every 6 or under with resident points that takes residents to draw. Those will be excluded, or those will be entered back onto the secondary draw. If it's 6 and over, then they go down the alternate list, and they try to reissue that through that avenue. But so there's going to be some tags on this secondary draw that took points to draw. Really good tags.
and upwards of 12, 15 non-resident points
Correct.
to drop because it's easier for a resident to get that license. That's why it was returned and eligible for this list.
The key to this is just remembering and keep it in the back of your mind. Any good tag, if you go down through, because they actually do have a draw recap report for last year's secondary draw. Any decent rifle tag out there that didn't have a ton of tags left over for it, meaning like 20, 30 or more, largely went to youth. And even some of those that had 20 or more went to youth. And that's deer, elk. I mean, not many antelope tags are ever left over, but deer, elk, I mean, black bear, usually, things like that, that'll still go to youth too. When it gets to, say, muzzleloader and archery, sometimes you will see, typically archery, there's a smaller number of youth that get applied for those tags. So if you want to sneak in there and maybe grab a tag that otherwise wouldn't, now understand if it's a 66 archery tag, it's probably going to go to youth, even if there's 5 or 6 available. But if it's some oddball 55 archery elk or something like that takes 0 or 1 point to draw, if there's a half a dozen tags left over, you may be able to get one of those.
So we fielded quite a few questions on this the last couple of weeks because the list of licenses is out, it's available online, and the deadline to apply is June 30th, so Friday. But this is a great money grab for the state of Colorado because all the adults are like, what? That's the tag I've been wanting. And so they apply for the 55 deer tag or 66 deer tag, thinking, oh, I got a shot. But read that line again. The youth get full preference. That means resident and non-resident youth, and they get all their choices. They will go through all 4 choices of every youth applicant before they even touch a first choice adult application.
Yep.
So if you're going for those super low tag number units, rifle, realize you may not even be close because there are moms and dads all over Colorado and the West saying, you're going to be a hunter. I'm putting you in for that tag.
Yep.
And they apply their youth hunters because it's $1.60 for the license.
Oh,
and
$10
to apply. And they just throw their kids in for it to gobble up those tags.
I mean, I got my daughter a tag last year on this. She got a 4th season rifle deer tag off the secondary draw. I mean, I'm not mad about it.
No.
I mean, it is a really good opportunity for the youth. I know some adults don't quite agree with the way they go about doing this, but at the same sense, it is a good opportunity for youth to get some tags out in there. But I think the biggest thing we just want to convey, don't waste your money if you're going to go after some of these, even though it's $9. You're just taking that $9 and throwing it in the garbage can.
Right, because there are hundreds and thousands of youth applicants.
I guess
for
it's
them.
$10 now, isn't it?
$10.
Son.
Yeah, so secondary draw, you do not have to have applied in the primary draw to play in the secondary. If you got a credit card, they will take it and everybody is eligible.
You still have to buy a qualifying license if you didn't buy that during the primary draw, though.
Correct.
To apply in the second draw.
Yep. So what happens next? These are all the licenses that were not taken in the draw or returned shortly thereafter. Now we get to our August 1st.
Yeah, and this is basically some of these that don't get gobbled up in the secondary draw, cow tags, private land tags, things of that nature. You're going to have some carryover and you're not going to get enough applicants in the secondary draw. Those will get rolled over into this August 1st deadline where it's a come one, like it's a first come, first serve. You jump on there, see what's available. Like you said, there will be some trickle in tags, just like you mentioned, that people turn back in after that deadline, after the secondary draw, but before this deadline. So you will still see some good tags in there. People will be clamoring all over each other because it's not a draw, it's a first come, first serve, and there's plenty of people with high-speed internet that are vying for those tags.
Yeah. So that list will come out last week of July.
Yeah.
We'll have that when the secondary draw is over and done, and it'll be messy August 1st.
Yeah.
Garth, let me ask you a question that came in because it relates to this. Tom asked, as a non-resident, I applied for archery elk in Colorado, but I was not drawn. When the secondary draw came out, there were tags available for the hunt I applied for, even though it was my second choice. How is that possible?
Well, realistically speaking, the way it's possible, because there must have been a bunch of guys turn that tag back in or surrender that tag. Because if you had as a second choice and there was a tag available, up to this point, Colorado doesn't discriminate. So once you get past the first choice, all quotas are out. They will issue tags to individuals, resident or non-resident, doesn't matter. They will issue tags to those individuals that applied if there's still tags left over. So that's where we see sometimes some upside down numbers. Well, we'll actually see more non-residents draw in like the primary draw than residents. It's just because it comes down to second, third choice and quotas no longer exist.
But to answer Tom's question further, if it is an archery tag, there's a decent chance that a bunch of youth are not going to apply for it in the secondary draw. So you may be able to sneak in there and get it simply because it's archery only.
100%.
So could be worth applying there.
Yep.
And when you apply in the secondary draw, you might as well fill out all 4 of your choices. You don't know what the next guy's doing, and they will just start awarding all the way through.
Yep.
A lot of guys put a really hard one that they have no chance of drawing as their first, and that forces the draw down to second choice, and so on.
Yep.
Following the August 1st leftover day, we'll call it, in Colorado, they'll start doing reissued licenses. And basically what that is you can still return your license up to 30 days before your season opens to get your points reinstated to the level you were at. And what that's going to do, they're going to process that return each Tuesday weekly. This is starting that second week of August. They're going to post the list of what's available. And then 11 a.m. about the following day on Wednesday, sales will go open on the Colorado website as well. If you are willing to take a tag last minute and you've got an open schedule, these licenses will get returned all the time, even up till seasons have opened through the season. So I always set a reminder in my phone each Tuesday evening, jump on there. I've got my short list of hunt codes I'm willing to go on or look for. If you see there's a tag available for a hunt you want, maybe it's worth checking at 11 a.m., trying to have the fastest fingers on the internet and get in there and buy it. Honestly, it's been getting more difficult. The last couple of years they've done this. It's difficult to be fast on that Wednesday and grab one, but it is worth checking because it doesn't burn your points if you're stacking them up. Any of these leftover opportunities reissued, they do not touch or purge your preference points, so it's worth grabbing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anything else on Colorado? We'll move on.
Now I got a ton of bears, $100 a tag. So look at the leftover list, because there's some of them units that have gobs of bear tags left in the September season. So if you're itching to shoot a bear, there's lots of them over there, and it's only $100. I would say it's the cheapest tag out there, but I think Oregon's the cheapest tag out there for bears.
Sweet. Now let's talk about Idaho. I know a question just came in. Why did you not talk about Idaho in the over-the-counter section? Well, partly has to do with where we are at. We're here at the end of June, and all non-resident elk and deer quotas have already sold out in Idaho. Sold out quite some time ago for their true over-the-counter elk or deer opportunities. So we'll kind of do this. You may think this is backwards, but we'll talk about the secondary draw first. So Idaho had a primary draw for all their controlled hunts. These are their limited entry, all their trophy hunts, anything that's limited, had a deadline of June 5th. And we're still waiting on those results to come out. But anybody who draws in the controlled drawing has to validate or purchase their tag by, August 1st.
Yeah.
If they don't buy it by August 1st, it could roll back into a secondary draw, kind of similar to Colorado. But if you don't pick it up, it's going to roll back. And August 5th through the 15th, we have a secondary draw. It's a money grab. If you already have a $205 license, it may be worth spending the $22 to get in to this drawing, pending there's the tag you want on the list. And every year there's guys who forget to pick up their top deer or elk or antelope unit. They space it. They don't realize they have to purchase it. They send you a little postcard and an email, but if you don't buy it, sorry, they roll it into a second draw. People apply for it. Everybody's eligible that has that hunt license. What they're also doing now is an outfitter allocated quota. They set aside outfitter tags. Those will become available as general season purchase in the middle of July. I don't really bank on those personally.
Well, those are unused, right?
They're
Those are ones that the outfitters didn't have buyers for.
They didn't have buyers for it. Yep. So this whole game in Idaho really starts the year before on December 1st. And that's why we didn't cover it under the over-the-counter section, because it's kind of too late to get an over-the-counter Idaho tag for this fall season. You really need to be planning ahead.
Yeah, that little graphic on the side there that says, has that little dude that's getting ready to walk all the way to the end of that, and that number right there, 17,260. That's the number in line, and that is a random assigned number. So anyone that still says it's over the counter, that is a draw, because you log in at the same time, they issue you a random number, and depending on where that random number lands, dictates if you have an early enough number to actually get the over the counter tag.
That's right. It's a joke. Honestly, it's very bad. Your best option is, if you have somebody that you know of, or you live close enough to Idaho to drive over there, is go to a licensed vendor on December 1st at 10 a.m. That could be at a gas station, sporting goods store, whatever it may be, where you can find the shortest line. Their system's a more efficient, I'll say.
Maybe they crashed it this year.
Oh yeah, you can crash the whole system because everybody wants to go to Idaho. But that is a better chance of grabbing a tag, because you're sitting here in this line that's virtual waiting room, they call it, on your computer. And then all of a sudden it says, oh, the zone or unit you're looking for is completely sold out. You're like, what? I just sat here for an hour and now it's sold out. It's frustrating.
Or 20 minutes.
We also do have within onX, we show where you can purchase licenses like all across the country. So use that, and to Austin's point there, maybe find like a, I don't know, one that's not the most popular, Sportsman's Warehouse or Cabela's or something of that nature. So once in a while, licenses are sold at pretty obscure places that you wouldn't expect. And if you find those, you might be a little bit better off.
Yeah, some bar and grill in Two Horse Town, Idaho.
But before you go into this, don't just show up on December 1st saying, I'll just see what I can get. Like, have a few zones in mind if you're looking at elk, or a few units in mind if you're looking at a deer unit, and say, this is what I'm going to try to get. This is my priority list. I've done the research. I know I can hunt here. Every now and then we get guys who are like, I bought a tag. I don't even know where it's at on the map.
It was all that was left. And we're like, Snake River. Shh.
It can be frustrating. So do some research beforehand, have a plan, go into this December 1st date. If you miss December 1st, what they start doing in April, and they'll do it clear through the season, is once a month, anything that's returned, you can return for a partial refund. People will return their tags out of the non-resident quota, and it opens it back up to be purchased by a non-resident. So there's a date online each month they do it. Honestly, you're going to be looking at the same website, same waiting room with a lot fewer people, but you may get lucky and sneak in and grab the unit you're looking for. So put those dates in your calendar if you're looking at trying to find one last minute. But honestly, outside of bears and wolves, it's not really an over-the-counter state anymore.
And don't hold your breath if you're thinking to yourself, man, I can't wait for that eastern elk tag or deer tag over in the Diamond Creek or somewhere over there, because they're not reissuing those tags if they get turned in. They're eating them. That's right. This year, anyways.
This year, yeah, they said because of the winter kill, we're gonna save some deer and elk, and we're not gonna reissue the turn back tags from non-residents.
But by hell, if you live there, kill them all.
Yeah. Residents still, it's a great state to live for resident opportunity, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But non-residents, it's very difficult for us now. So that's Idaho. Montana, we do have an opportunity here. We're not going to go into too much depth on the Montana. We did a whole masterclass just on Montana elk and deer, and I would recommend go back and watch that. But if you did not draw a general license, meaning the general combination, either the elk deer combo or the elk alone or deer alone, and you still are interested in that for this year, meaning 2023.
Even if you didn't apply.
even if you didn't apply, you're just haven't purchased anything, you can add yourself to this alternate list, they call it, by Friday, June 30th. The alternate list is as simple as logging into your account, clicking which list you want to be on. There's 3, the big game, deer, or the elk. And what they'll do in July is randomly prioritize that list. It'll tell you your spot on the list, so you know if there's any chance or no chance at all. They'll put all the thousands of us ordered on the list, but if you fall in the top few hundred of that list, there's a good chance you'll get an opportunity to purchase a license. You're not committing to anything, you're not pre-purchasing anything, but if the tag gets returned, it comes up, they send you an email, you've got a few days to purchase it if you desire. If not, just ignore the email and go on with life. So the odds we've ran, if you got about anywhere from 7 to 11% chance of being high enough on that list that you will get offered a license this year. And that could be all the way through the season. So it may be last minute, they just go down the list and try to make more money as licenses get returned.
Yeah.
But open to anybody that's interested in coming to Montana, June 30th deadline for that one.
It's kind of cool. I mean, you could say that's basically like a secondary draw, kind of.
Nevada, we'll be short on this one. We got all excited about the Nevada return tag process, right? They were open to anybody, and there were some really good tags on there, even sheep tags, bighorn sheep tags, deer, elk, everything. Any tag returned less than 14 days before the season opened, they would not reissue it to an alternate. They would just dump it on the website. First come, first serve, whoever could grab it, purchased it. The big change, however, for this year, why you can almost cross this off your list, is the residents freaked out and said, we're returning resident tags, but non-residents are buying them, and that's not fair. They're taking our quota, even though it was returned. So only residents can purchase resident return tags this year. So we're expecting substantially less permits returned, meaning only non-resident tags can be purchased by non-residents.
Yeah, but those freaking residents can't get their grubby hands on our non-resident tags that get returned. So all 3 or 4 of them we get.
I wouldn't spend a lot of time watching this website because they could populate anytime, day or night,
yes,
before the season, whenever they get randomly populated. It made it fair, if you will. They put some stops in place so you couldn't game the system too bad, but now with the residency requirement, you can almost write it off.
I think the cool thing about this is, though, if you're sitting there watching the website, that's still going to pop up, but it's going to be grayed out. So you can see all the tags you could have got last year. And what's bad is you'll probably see the same tags cycle through probably half a dozen times on some of these deer hunts that non-residents can't get and residents don't want. You know what I mean?
They do burn your points.
100%.
So
it burns your points.
Like, I don't want it. But a non-resident is like, yes, Nevada.
It's going to be interesting to see how this goes.
Okay, last section here, then we'll take some questions. Make sure to drop your questions into the Q&A if you have them, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. But points only, this is planning ahead. So just because most of the draws are done for this year, you still have an opportunity to purchase points only in many states.
Yeah. No, most of these states, what's nice about this, well, yeah, there's good and bad, obviously, with purchasing them after, but realistically, it's a pretty good deal because after everything's done, you can still go in. If you're just planning on building points for this year, you can see it's relatively inexpensive to go in and purchase those tags after. You don't have to buy a qualifying license to enter into the draw. You can just buy that after the fact. So you've got a few states here that you can go in and do that with. I mean, in my opinion, Wyoming's kind of the wild card there where you're like, I don't know if my points are going to help me that much or not at this stage. Like, if you're really interested in buying that moose and sheep point in Wyoming, it might help you, maybe, depending on what they decide to do. But realistically, those are the deadlines. Just don't forget, that's the bad, is all the draws are over. And so, like, especially Wyoming, if you went in and you've had an unsuccessful draw, just remember that doesn't automatically give you a point. You still have to go back in during that points only period and buy the points for those species that you want. So don't forget.
Don't forget. Let's talk a little bit, since we're on Wyoming in that corner. There's been some questions about winter kill. Like, should I keep buying points in Wyoming? The license fees are going to go up substantially next year. They've lost a lot of antelope and deer. What's your outlook on that?
If you've got $1,200 to spend on a special antelope tag, buy a point, because you're going to be able to get in and get those fairly easily, in my prediction. Because what's going to happen is you're going to see a shift of a lot of the guys who are willing to spend, what, $600, $700? You're going to see a lot of those guys are like, well, I'll spend that, but I ain't spending 8 or 9. They're going to shift to the regular draw. But I guess taking that into just full circle, how the Wyoming winter kill was, listen, we all know they're susceptible to winter kill. They are in Montana. They are in Idaho. Some of these northern states, they always have that lingering over their head. Unfortunately, last year was one of those years where it happened. They can build back, and they will build back. Antelope bounce back pretty quickly, especially with how aggressive Wyoming was with tag cuts and basically eliminating doe and fawn tags, which kudos to them. Like, they addressed the problem. Same thing with deer. Deer don't bounce back quite as fast as antelope, but a lot of that country up there, it has some good feed. I mean, if they have 4 or 5 winters in a row that are fairly mild, you'll start to see that bounce back. I mean, I know we had the same thing happen in region G and H, 8 years ago? Lo and behold, the last 2 years, it's like, oh man, they're shooting some freaking dandies up in that country over in the grays. Well, just as soon as they started smacking good bucks, winter came in and said, not today.
Yeah.
But it'll be back. Trust me, it'll come back. So my advice to you is, when it comes to elk, deer, and antelope, still buy the points. It's still a good opportunity state to go in. I know they're going to change some things around for elk. They might regionalize those hunts similar to deer. We don't know what that's going to make as far as points required to draw certain areas. That'll all have to be, sifted out. But yeah, those 3 species still get your points.
Definitely.
This year's probably not the best year to burn them.
I'll point out, in Montana, if you did not participate in the lovely general draw this year, and you think, I want to next year, definitely buy that $100 preference point before December 31st.
Yeah.
But you must use it next year, otherwise it'll go away. So if you don't think you're going to apply in March next year for deer, elk, don't buy it.
And
it's $100.
If you got advice in the past, which was probably accurate advice when they did it, and they said, hey, if you plan ahead and you buy a point this year, and then coming up in the next year's draw, you purchase another point, you can pretty much bank on going hunting next year for elk or your big game combo. That's not the case anymore.
No.
It's a high probability you'll draw with 2 points, but certainly not a guarantee anymore. But definitely plan ahead. If you do apply in the draw and you don't draw, you won't get those points stripped from you. You just roll into the next year and you carry those 2 points with you.
That's right. Now we will take some questions. We sure appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully we've given you some things to look at, some hunts maybe you didn't know about at first. Now's the time to plan. It's never too early, never too late, honestly. So, Garth, we got a couple questions. OTC archery pronghorn in Colorado.
Oh man,
what's your opinion?
Forget about that. It's decent. So if you're not hung up on the size of the animal that you're going to harvest, there is some pretty good areas over on the eastern side that have access either through like state wildlife areas that grant access to that. There's some grasslands over there you can hunt as well. There's a few on the western slope as well. Those ones on the western slope, be careful with those. There's very, very low populations. Some of them are in close proximity to other units that have good populations or decent populations of antelope, but there's not a lot of them. That's why they're enrolled in the over-the-counter. So your best opportunity, in my opinion, is over on that kind of southeastern side of the state and some of those grasslands down there. There's good amounts of antelope, not big antelope, so don't go in thinking this is a trophy type hunt, but it's a good opportunity to get out, stretch your legs, and hunt antelope. I like it. I don't know why I forgot it.
Following along with that, what about whitetail only tags or Eastern Plains stuff. I mean, a lot of those are going to be
private land areas.
private land, undersubscribed.
The tricky thing about getting some of those whitetail only tags in Colorado, largely private land. Most of the whitetail hang out near ag fields or in lowland brush bottoms. If you can find it in an area that's adjacent to maybe some of those corridors or those channels where it's a state wildlife area that has, say, ag fields on both sides, and they're pretty much using that zone or that those wash beds or maybe even river beds as bedding areas. Yes, look into those, but you're going to have to do some research in advance. I wouldn't recommend going too heavy on that unless you've got some decent, some decent knowledge of whitetail and bedding areas and things like that, and verify that, yes, indeed, you can hunt some of those state wildlife areas.
Dylan, do you have any other questions on your end?
Yeah, I've got a couple from registration. So is there any type of good strategy for non-residents for trying to pick up some of these leftover tags with 2 to 4 people? So essentially like a party. I want to, come to X state and get a leftover tag, but I've got 3 hunting buddies with me.
So I guess one thing we should have said on the secondary draw, there is no party apps. So,
Colorado, you're saying?
Yeah, in Colorado. So when we talked about that, if you're thinking, okay, there's 60 or 100 tags left over for this hunt, let's just all put it as a group and go. It's still worth it to put in, but just understanding we apply as an individual. I guess as far as what do you think as far as a group of 4 other outside of, over the counter is going to be their best opportunity.
That's what I just answered a gentleman that was asking about that. If it's true over the counter, you can show up and purchase them, obviously no problem. But these states like Idaho, where you got to plan a quota, or Arizona playing in the archery quota, it's going to be very difficult to make sure you all get a tag at the same time because of the checkout process.
Yeah, it's tricky. Obviously I would say I'd point to Arizona and say, well, it's a little bit better there based on how long it took if it took 4 days, let's say you have that and it takes 2 days this year, I'm hoping you can check out in 2 days. Yeah. But if y'all jump on there at the same time, it's probably the best avenue to do that in. But outside of that, it's pretty much just over the counter for big group.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Couple more here. You guys might have covered this one. Does Utah take your points away for OTC tags?
No.
Good question, though.
Yeah, it is a good question. No, they don't. Your points are separate from any type of general elk, and so you'll retain those points regardless. You only burn them if you have a successful draw.
Yeah. So to expand on that, if you are waiting or trying to apply for a trophy big bull unit for elk, you can come with a spike tag and hunt that same exact unit, right? And if you're hunting archery, you're hunting over top of those guys, right? If you're hunting the early part of the season, same elk, same unit, you just have a different tag. The guy who waited 20 years, he can shoot the big bull. You're only chasing spikes, but you get to be there and see what the unit's like. Maybe you don't like it and you want to apply somewhere else. So a good way to research in the field for sure.
Cool. Last one here. You probably covered this one to some extent, but this person or individual said Colorado replaced their leftover tag system with a secondary draw. What's your opinions on the new system? Is it better, or does it make it more difficult?
Now repeat the last. Is it better or what?
More difficult.
It's more difficult to draw. Yeah, because now it's come one, come all. They allow anybody their previous leftover draw. You actually had to check a box when you put in for the primary draw to get that list and be eligible to apply for it. Now you don't even have to apply in the primary draw, and you can go in and actually apply for that secondary. So, and they didn't give any preference to youth under the leftover draw. So way more difficult to get a tag if you're an adult. Fair, I don't know where to fit that in.
It's definitely more beneficial for their economics, right? Taking a lot more application fees. So
that was a follow-up question for me personally, not knowing this. Is you apply for that secondary draw, is that just your application fee times 2 then, or how does that work for money?
Just an additional application fee.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. So you've already bought about $100 for your small game license earlier this year. It's just $10 more. Doesn't affect your points. Doesn't do anything. So,
but if you got kids,
copy.
It's a lot more fair. Maybe.
Maybe. Well, that's I have on my end. Anything else on your guys's?
I think so.
Nope.
Cool. I know you guys answered a bunch behind the scenes there. So with that, yeah, I really appreciate your guys' time and just everybody who's stuck on with us for this time. Hopefully it helps you get more tags and fill some voids in your hunts this fall. I'm going to start exploring a few of these opportunities myself, and it's good to know about these opportunities, whether you use them this year or try and, if they're still available next year, I should say, try and take advantage then. But yeah, any final thoughts or closing points?
Just one last plug for what we do. I mean, onX, they sit around and come up with the most amazing new features on their app. And if you haven't played with them all, they're coming out like crazy. So check them out. What do we do all day? We sit around and help people go on hunts and find more hunting opportunities. This is not a side gig for us. This is literally what we do, and we feel blessed to do it. So use the tools that we provide. Tell us how we can make them better. Hit us with your questions, emails. We love it. So go out there and make some memories.
What I would say is, if you're a little intimidated on coming on some of these over-the-counter hunts, don't overthink them. Just go on them, experience it. There's no way to get that experience without going on these hunts. So too often I think people overthink like just getting on the hunt itself. Just go. I mean, it's the best way to get that knowledge base under you, get reps in the red zone. Yeah, just don't overthink it.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you guys a ton. And yeah, definitely reach out to Huntin if you guys have any additional questions. And like I said earlier, utilize the elite version with the free digital membership, but certainly take a look at the all access there, what they have to offer you. Certainly won't regret it. It's well worth the extra money for each year, especially if you are applying for multiple states. I mean, again, just to reiterate for myself, I'm throwing hundreds of dollars at states and applications and building strategy, and just knowing that I'm putting that money in a place where it actually makes sense and isn't like completely wasting it is well worth that additional cost. So check it out. And again, thank you guys for everything. I appreciate your guys' time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.